should be good.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is the November 30th meeting of the Springfield Zoning Board of Adjustment. The time is 6:10. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the Sunshine Law. Notice was published on the September 30th, 2021 in the local source, the official newspaper for the Township of Springfield for the year 2021, and posted in the Annex Building on October 1st, 2021. Notice was also posted to the Township of Springfield website. Can we please stand to salute the flag? Okay, we can call to order, please.
Mr. Mark Cunningham. Mr. Stephen Hochstein.
Here.
Mr. Daniel Poltrock.
Here.
Mr. Stephen Firschenbaum. Mr. Matthew Glass. Mr. Raj Sahada.
Here.
Vice Chair Harris Lawfer.
Here.
And Chair Jody Cohen.
Here.
We have 5. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, so the first order of business is the resolutions of memorialization from the previous meeting. We have application 2021-25, which is for Block 403, Lot 4. Has every member of the board have an opportunity to read the resolution, review it? Are there any questions or comments? If none, is there a motion to approve?
Well, second.
Thank you.
Mr. Poltrock.
Yes.
Mr. Sahada.
Yes.
Mr. Hochstein.
Is this for both of them, or the
Just
first?
the one.
The first
The
one.
first one, yes.
And Chair Cohen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution of memorialization for application 2021-28, block 2004, lot 20. Have the members had an opportunity to review the resolution? Are there any questions or comments? If none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion. Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Sahada.
I seconded, but
Oh,
yes.
sorry. Mr. Poltrock.
Yes.
Mr. Sahada.
Yes.
Did you recuse?
I had to recuse
Yes.
myself, that's why.
So you abstain, and Chair Cohen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to the applications this evening. We'll call each of the witnesses up. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions of that witness, and then at the close of the application, we will open it up to the public once again to make any comments on the application. The first application that we're calling up this evening is application 2021-30 for 120 Tooker Avenue, block 1201, lot 64. This is a request for a front yard setback for a front yard expansion, front step expansion. Good evening, how are you?
Good evening. Doug Stewart, 120 Tooker Avenue. Not used to speaking into a mic. Lived here for about 11 years. It's a pretty simple variance. It's
Yes,
essentially...
we need to, sorry, just
sorry.
1 second. We need to swear you in first, please.
Okay,
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name, address, spell your last name.
Douglas Stewart, last name spelled S-T-E-W-A-R-T. Address is 120 Tooker Avenue. There about 11 years.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yes, now.
Now I
Sure.
explain what...
Yes,
Okay.
please.
This is...
Mic is open.
This is a request to get a variance for a front yard setback of about 2 feet. It's essentially for my mother-in-law. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, so I included a picture on page 7. Due to the swing of the storm door, it's a little bit difficult for people with walkers to kind of clear the storm door and get in. That extra 2 feet will extend over the existing porch. We're repairing that porch anyway, and make it easier for folks to get in. Pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Any members of the board have any questions for the applicant?
I just want to know, are the materials going to match the existing house of the part that you're adding on?
It is. I think the big difference is going to be solid stone for the steps. If you can see from the picture now, it's individual bricks. It hasn't been repaired in about 20 years, and I think that increases the likelihood of like mortar wear. So we're at the point where it's starting, the mortar's really starting to wear. So with that exception, yeah, it's gonna match the existing.
And the storm door, has it always been there since you've owned the property?
So I asked the previous owner that. It's been there for about 20 years. It's an old house that's been updated a bunch of times, so we have not replaced it with sort of modern door. It's a custom-made original door, so the storm door has been there, we think, for about 20 years. Yeah, it's pretty good to keep the cold out. The old custom-made doors can be drafty.
2 feet's all you need?
About 2 feet, that should be fine. There's only about 6 inches right now, so it's a little bit hard. We noticed it for, you guys probably know my street is the trick-or-treating street of Tucker. When there's lots of kids on the front porch, that's a little bit hard. We tend to leave it open for that, but yeah, my mother-in-law now is having some issues. So as long as we're redoing the front porch, we gotta ask for a variance. 2 feet's all I need.
Any other questions from the board members? Are there any members of the public that have any questions for the applicant? None? I'm in favor of granting the variance. I think that it wouldn't cause any detriment to the surrounding community, so if the board is in agreement, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Vice Chair Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Hochstein?
Yes.
Mr. Poltrock?
Yes.
Mr. Sahada?
Yes.
And Chair Cohen?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, the next application on this evening is application 2021-31-170 Baltusrol Avenue, Block 67, Lot 8. This is a request for a lot coverage variance for an addition to the home. Good evening, how are you? Will you both be testifying? Okay, so we're going to swear you both in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name, address, spell your last name.
It's Patricia Shadle, it's Schaedel. I live at 170 Baltusrol Avenue.
And are you an expert? Okay, state your name, spell your last name, and provide your business address.
Thomas K. Hoffman, AIA, architect, 585 Plainfield Avenue, Berkeley Heights, New Jersey.
Thank you. Before you testify, we'll have to qualify you.
Yes. Okay, so would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're looking to do and the reasons for the addition?
Okay, I've lived there for 46 years in this house, and my husband of 52 years has Alzheimer's, and I currently have him in an assisted living, and they're not able to care for him there as well as I would like. So I wanted to enclose our porch and make it a bedroom on the first floor. He can't walk anymore. I also wanted to have it large enough so that I could put a handicap, like a wheelchair shower, get bathroom in the first floor addition. So that's basically why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Should we qualify the architect, and you could just walk us through what the request is, the requested relief that we're looking at with this addition? Okay. Your name, your business,
Tom Hoffman, architect.
your license in the state of New Jersey?
Licensed in the state of Jersey since 1991. I've presented before this board twice before.
Okay,
I've presented in Summit and adjacency for about 110 times.
is your license current?
It is current.
Okay. Do any members of the board have any objection to qualifying the witness as professional in architecture? No.
So basically what we're looking to do is create a bedroom on the first floor. We looked at the existing house and we could carve out existing rooms because they're living there and they need the space. All the bedrooms were on the second floor, so the idea became an existing deck at the back of the house, goes across the back of the house. We'll take part of it and not getting any closer to the side yard, just extending the house with a one-story addition. and creating a bedroom with a closet and a handicap accessible, a larger bathroom. Where we run into issues is it's 190 square feet. The existing house is over on coverage and on lot coverage, on building and lot. We're adding another 5% to that. So in the scale of things, it's not a lot, but what happened is instead of a 30-foot backyard, we're at 26, 11 and a half. So we're 4.5 feet closer to the rear. From the street, you won't see the addition. It is a one-story addition where there is already a raised deck. So the impact on the backyard is fairly minimal. All of the materials will be done in keeping with what's on the house now. And the idea is to make life a little easier so that they don't have to. And it's an older house, and the steps are like 8 and 12. I mean, it's like climbing a ladder to existing steps. It's an older house. They've lived here for quite a long time. And we're just looking for anything to relieve it. Make it a little more livable.
It's undersized.
And it's an undersized lot, yeah.
Right. Okay. Any members of the board have any questions for the applicant or the witness?
I just have one for the town engineer. Is there a stormwater management that's needed on this?
Not required for this, it's under our threshold.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Other,
Just one item. I believe we received an amended set of one page of the plans, A2, is that correct?
Showing the rear elevation.
Okay.
I think that was not on the original, and this was just a requirement of a one-story addition.
Okay, then we're gonna mark that as applicant 1 as an exhibit because it was not in the public record 10 days in advance. I just wanted that to be in the record.
thank you. Are there any members of the public that have any questions for the witness or the applicant? Any members of the public that wish to comment on the application? No. Members of the board? I think that this is an undersized lot. I think that the increase is de minimis compared to the existing, and I do not believe that it would cause a detriment to grant the variance that's requested. So for those reasons, I'm in favor.
Complete agreement.
Excellent. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion. Second. Very quick,
Who made the motion?
very quick. Me.
Okay,
Very quick.
thank you. Mr. Poltrock?
Yes,
Vice Chair Lawfer?
absolutely.
Mr. Hochstein?
Yes.
Mr. Sahada?
Yes.
And Chair Cohen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
1 minute court reporter.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Oh, you mean, are you going in here today?
Good.
Oh, okay, we're back on the record. It is 6:32. The next application we're gonna call up is application 2021-29, 240 Route 22 West, Block 3701, lots 8 and 10. The requested relief is preliminary and final site plan approval with a use variance and bulk variance relief for a drive-through fast food restaurant. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Madam Chairwoman, board members, members of the public, board professionals. Stephen Hale, representing the applicant. Great to see everyone. Hope you all enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday. Yes, this is an application for redevelopment of the site. It's 240 Route 22 West. It's been a center there for quite some time, most notably the Barnes & Noble, which is at that location. This is looking to redevelop the site in its entirety and replace it with a drive-through Chick-Fil-A fast food restaurant. The proposal is before this board because while restaurants are a conditional use in the HC zone, fast food restaurants do need the use variance, and again, we will present our proofs in connection with that. I do want to thank your board professionals, three seated to the right here. Their reports were very helpful to our team. We've had an opportunity to review them at least initially, and we'll have responses to their comments, and we certainly anticipate that we will be making revisions to the plans based upon their comments, feedback we received from the board, and feedback we received from the public. I did have an opportunity to, not to steal Mr. Bergen's thunder, but I know you're only 5 voting members. You do have a quorum, but usually on the use variance application, particularly on larger cases, we would want to have a full complement of board members and also give those missing board members an opportunity to participate. So we do have our court reporter here this evening to transcribe, and we will provide the board promptly with the transcripts from tonight's hearing. So again, this is an application to demolish the existing structures at the site and construct a new restaurant of approximately 5,400 square feet. It's going to have adequate stacking for 39 vehicles, a dedicated bypass lane. There'll be new lighting, landscaping, reconfiguration, drainage, and fencing and the like. So it's going to be a great improvement to the site. We did receive the comments, and we're going to discuss those in more detail as to why there's an excess, for lack of a better phrase, of parking and coverage, and again, we will address that through our presentation to the board. That, again, was raised by your board professionals, and again, we will address those. And we did receive, again, your board planner's report, board traffic engineer's report, and board engineer report, again, all of which were very helpful. We think that we do have a very nice layout for the restaurant. We know Chick-fil-A, they're a successful drive-through restaurant. And, some of the restaurants, I'll give you an example, the one in Union is a dozen years old, has a single drive-through with stacking of maybe 18 cars. This is a double drive-through and the larger site allows us to have a pass-by lane, which helps. And as technology has improved, there's different apps where people order things. I know in our office we order, they order it on the phone, and somebody goes and picks it up, and certainly makes for a much more efficient operation. So that's an overview of our application, and what I'd like to do first is to call upon John Martinez. John is from Chick-fil-A, and where normally we might put on our site engineer to give an overview of the site and talk a little bit about site improvements. John is well familiar with the operation, with this site, with the layout. We did have some preliminary meetings with the township, which was helpful. We got preliminary feedback from them at that time, too. So if the board or board professionals don't have any preliminary questions, I want to call upon Mr. Martinez. Yes, please.
I know you mentioned it, but I just want to make sure the record is clear. On the issue of whether this is a restaurant or a fast food restaurant, which I guess is a technical difference under our ordinance, and whether you would need a full use variance or conditional use. What's the applicant's position?
Well, restaurants are conditionally permitted. Restaurants with a drive-through require the D1 use variance.
If, again, just to make the record clear, the township planner's report references that fast food restaurants are specifically excluded from the definition of a restaurant, which would make the entire use a non-permitted use.
Yeah, and that we recognize.
Okay,
And our planner will address that in much more detail
very good,
throughout the...
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hale, before you proceed, I just want to address the public very quickly. I had said this at the beginning of the meeting, but for anyone who's joined us since then, each witness will come up. We are going to give members of the public an opportunity after each witness presents their case to ask questions of that witness. It is not an opportunity for comments to the board. It is just questions that pertain to that witness's testimony. At the end of the hearing, at the close of the applicant's presentation, the application will be open to members of the public, and you will be able to comment at that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, I'd like to call upon Mr. John Martinez, and you'll be sworn, John.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Could you please state your full name, spell your last name, give us your business address?
John Martinez, Martinez. I'm a development manager with Chick-Fil-A. My business address is 5200 Buffington Road in Atlanta, Georgia. I will note for the record that I don't have a southern accent, so I do live in New Jersey. I live actually in Middlesex County.
So first, Mr. Martinez, if you could give the board a little background of your position with Chick-fil-A, and then we can talk about the selection of this site.
Sure. So I've been in the role of the development manager for new store development at Chick-fil-A for a little over 7 years. Been associated with Chick-fil-A for over 20 years. So my responsibility is when a potential location is identified, I'll work with our team, our attorneys, our engineers, our architects, to work with the landlord to come up and program that site, all the way through approvals, even building permits. And once that building permit is issued, I turn it over to the construction group.
So tell us a little bit about this site and some of the surrounding Chick-fil-A's.
Sure. If it's all right, I'll just kind of start with Chick-fil-A, just kind of answer some general questions at first. So Chick-fil-A corporately, we find our own sites. Even though we have a franchisee that runs the store, we choose our own locations. We self-develop those locations, all out of our pocket. Privately held company. We build roughly about 130 a year. So this year, if all goes well, we'll open about 134 Chick-fil-A's. We're hoping in 2022 to open 157 throughout the country. Sounds like a lot, but really when you break it down per state, it's only a couple per state. But Chick-fil-A has taken note that the Northeast, specifically northern New Jersey, is a very good market for Chick-fil-A. We've put in an extraordinary amount of effort into finding locations throughout the state. So this year we're opening stores up and down Route 1. So we just opened a store in Lawrence. We have a store that's going to open tomorrow in Edison. We have another store that's going to open in North Brunswick shortly. We're building in Freehold. We opened one in Linden this year. So we're also looking at another second location in Woodbridge. So Chick-fil-A is committed to the community at large here in New Jersey to provide Chick-fil-A. And the reason for that is some of our existing locations have experienced tremendous growth. So if you're familiar, you're obviously familiar with the ones in the Union, but if you're familiar with Route 17, if you travel towards Ramsey, it's had phenomenal growth. Out of Route 10 in Morris Plains. So Chick-fil-A as a company is committed to put other stores here to help relieve those existing stores. The challenge we have is each store stands on its own, and each store is independently run by a franchisee. So unlike some of our competitors where a franchisee may get a territory to maintain or multiple locations, typically it's one store per operator. That operator's sole source of income comes from that store. So they really focus in and try to build that store, which is great. If that operator has proven themselves over many years, they may get a second location. I can tell you one thing for sure, I have absolutely no say over who gets those. That's done by others, and that decision is not even made until we're ready to go into construction. So here at this particular location, this was identified as a site that we've been looking here on Route 22. As you know, we opened Watchung not too long ago. We have Union. And we've been looking at other locations here. this site became available. It's a rather unique site for Chick-fil-A. I can tell you that in my 20-plus years of working with Chick-fil-A, I've never developed a Chick-fil-A on this large of a piece of property before. But Chick-fil-A has learned quite a bit in recently with regards to operations, the size of our sites, and certainly COVID's been an education for everybody, certainly for us. And what we found is that our sites really do need to be larger in size than they have been in the past. In the past, we were an acre and a quarter, maybe, if that was a large site. Now we're looking at larger sites where we can have much more room to be able to operate properly and not to have any effect on either the highway, adjacent roads, other tenants, surrounding neighborhoods. We really want to be self-contained on that site. And part of that is finding the larger sites. This particular site, I believe, is like 4.5 acres, very, very large. But Chick-fil-A made a conscious decision to take down the entire piece of property. In the past, we may have rented a portion of the lot, but we decided to take down, so we controlled the entire lot. And we did that for a very specific reason. And that is, we want to make sure that when we open and operate here, that Chick-fil-A can operate on this property. We get all the grand pent-up demand done. We really operate properly. And based on that operation, we may then look to potentially rent out other areas of the site if there's a need, if there's an ability to do that. So it really comes down to how we operate our business. And if we can do that, we'll look at that in the future. So I just want to say that here today, this is an application strictly for Chick-fil-A. We're taking the entire site. We're doing that for Chick-fil-A. In the future, we may be back to the town for an additional user, whether that's everything from another fast food user to a large supermarket, to a retailer, to a cell phone store. I don't know what that is, but that decision is going to be based upon what the site can handle at the time. And I think for the township, that's a unique opportunity for the township. Typically, when a developer comes in on a site like this, they develop pretty much everything all at the same time. And it's a little bit of an unknown of how that's all going to work. The township's going to have a great opportunity here that if and when we come back, you'll not only have the chance to approve it, but you'll see how the Chick-fil-A is operating, and then a real rational decision can be made, hey, what can go there? What could that site handle? So I just wanted to kind of put that on the record, that that's our intent with this site, and that's why you see a site with 260 parking spaces. Clearly, Chick-fil-A, we don't need that many spaces. We typically would build a site somewhere in the neighborhood of upper 50s, 60s of parking is about what we need. Although I will tell you, during COVID, we realized with the amount of mobile ordering, third-party delivery, that parking lots are still pretty important to us. Obviously, the drive-through is an important feature here. Stephen had touched on it. This drive-through is not like anything you've seen yet. We are building these facilities in other parts of the country with great success. And what it allows us to do with the double drive-through, not only do cars have the ability to 2 cars order, we can serve multiple cars at the same time. So if you notice, should we mark this site plan? Sure. Refer to it.
It's A1, phase A.
Yeah, applicant 1.
And if, you can grab that mic, right?
So
If you want to stay over there and use that mic, okay.
my eyesight's not great, but I can still see it. I'm just referring to Exhibit A1, which is an aerial map that has an overlay of the Chick-fil-A overlaid onto it. It's prepared by Collier's Engineering and Design, entitled CFA Springfield, New Jersey. So I think what I was saying, the important thing that we've learned on this site is that we'll have a dual ordering capabilities and dual fulfillment capabilities. So you may have seen some Chick-fil-A's where they'll have the ability to take orders from multiple cars at once. Here we'll be able to actually deliver food to multiple cars at the same time. And that's done via, we don't use the typical drive-through window that you may see where it slides back and forth the window to pass foods out. We actually remove that and we install a door that has that window in there and also opens up in a sliding fashion that allows customers to be able to serve food. And we've done this a few locations. I've built a few here in the Northeast. Nothing really close by. We just opened a facility that'll be similar in Newcastle, Delaware, and also another one out near Scranton, Pennsylvania. But it's been technology that really saved our hide in locations during COVID. So I want to assure you that this location here will have all the latest, bells and whistles for this Chick-fil-A. It'll be nothing like you've seen before. We have additional capacity inside the store for kitchen. The building's fairly large. I know there was some discrepancy about the size of the building, but the building is 5,471 square feet, which is a fairly large quick service restaurant. We're not adding seating inside, but we are adding kitchen capacity to that. So we can really produce quite a bit of food and serve that food.
And why don't you give the board a little overview how this will function, hours of operation,
Sure.
deliveries, trash, et cetera?
Sure. So hours of operation will be similar to other Chick-fil-A's. We open at 6:30 in the morning. We do serve breakfast. I can tell you that while a lot of people in the north don't eat chicken for breakfast, it's really good. We also then close 10 o'clock at night. That's Monday through Saturday. We are closed Sundays. No, we're closed Sundays. We do get deliveries. There are basically two types of deliveries we get. We'll get deliveries, large, over-the-road tractor-trailer deliveries with product. That comes 2 times a week. Typically, it's 4 times a week. But if it's a real busy store, that may even be increased. They come overnight. So they come when the store closes. So when it closes at 10 o'clock, by around 11 o'clock, it's literally locked up and the alarm's set. These trucks will come at that time. They'll open up and they do what's called a key drop. So they'll undo the door, turn the alarm off, put the freezer product in the freezer, refrigerated product in a refrigerator, dry goods on the floor. They lock it back up and leave. We also get a second type of delivery. We get is daily delivery of like fresh bread, vegetables, those types of things. But those deliveries are in very small, like van type trucks, and they would just use a parking stall to be there. Trash is picked up. We typically start every other day with our trash being picked up. If it's a particularly busy store, we can increase that to every day. No issue at all. The trash facilities are actually, we have a bay for garbage. It's inside of an enclosure that's 8 foot high. It's actually a little over 8 foot high, a brick enclosure. We have a bay for recycling. We produce a fair amount of cardboard. And we also have a small storage building also attached to that for things that you wouldn't want to keep inside your kitchen. Snow blower, a bag of salt, snow shovel, that kind of thing. And that's located on the site, kind of behind the building.
And speaking of snow blowing and the like, if you could address the site maintenance, I know that's important.
Sure. So Chick-fil-A takes a lot of pride in that. We really put a lot of pressure on our operators to maintain the site. So we'll fully landscape the site. We'll irrigate the entire site. The site will be striped, plowed, maintained. We have a very rigorous schedule to follow.
And talk a little bit about the methods of service. We talked about the drive-through, the
Sure.
apps. Explain
Sure.
a little bit about that.
So historically, Chick-fil-A really had 2 ways of getting food to customers, right? Through the drive-through or indoor seating. As we were getting through 2018, 2019, we started seeing a little bit more on people wanting to use mobile apps. So Chick-fil-A invested heavily in a mobile app to be able to order food. Usage was fairly, in 2019, it was probably about 2% of our customers ordered mobilely. Wow, that really changed during COVID with everybody. Once the dining rooms were closed and people started coming and waiting in the lines, our drive-through lines were extremely long. And what people found, what we encouraged folks to do was download our app. And when you did that, you ordered there, you could bypass the line. Basically, you just go to the parking lot and we'd bring the food out to you. That usage of mobile ordering went from about 2% in 2019 to, it's probably about 25% today. And we don't see that changing at all. What we have noticed, though, is there are some changes we've made to COVID that you will see. So things like a child's play area is no longer prototypically installed in Chick-fil-A, so that won't be in here. We're also starting to see less and less seating inside the stores because we've spread it out a little bit. So it's changed, but the mobile usage has really increased. We've also seen a big increase in the third-party deliveries, the DoorDashes and the Uber Eats of the world. And so a lot of our facilities are designed with them in mind in two ways, which is very important. One is, we have the parking lot is close and convenient for them. But more importantly, inside, a lot of times we'll have two doors, for instance, in the front of our building. One is for that third-party delivery folks, because nothing to be disparaging against them, but they'll come in, they have a different motivation in getting the food. They get paid by the number of trips they do. So we've noticed that they'll come in and they'll kind of barge into a restaurant, they'll kind of cut the line and run them, and that's not a good customer service for our restaurant model. So we typically segregate them to a specific area of the restaurant that they don't necessarily have to interact with the restaurant. But that is also a growing part of our business. And Chick-fil-A, with that in mind, we've actually are investigating doing our own delivery. It's not completely rolled out yet, but we will eventually be our own DoorDash, our own Uber.
And I know that Mr. Kelly from Colliers is here to explain the site plan in more detail. If you could just give the board an overview,
Sure.
Sort of familiar with the site, an overview of the site, where the drive-through lanes, parking, and
Sure.
I know there's new lighting and landscaping, will be explained in more detail, but a general.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that when we had a pre-app, of course, with the township officials had a lot of good impact. We also had a pre-app with the DOT. And the DOT kind of guided us that they really wanted us to keep those curb cuts the same. They didn't really, and they worked great. I mean, it's a separate in and out, they're fairly far apart. So in designing this site, we wanted to make sure that we kept those curb cuts the same. So we looked back on Hillside as well and said, it seems to be working, we'll start there. The township staff had made a suggestion, which we thought was a really good suggestion. They wanted to try and encourage anyone that goes here not to necessarily double back to Springfield, especially if you don't have to. If you don't, to Hillside, if you don't live in the community behind, if you're on from 22, try and keep them on 22. So one of the things they encouraged us to look at, which we did, is you'll notice how our building is placed in I guess it's the southwest corner of the site. When you pick up your food and you leave the drive-through, by site design, you're encouraged to go right out to 22. You don't have to go into 22, but certainly it's going to encourage the majority of those folks that are traveling on 22 are going to have as easy access back out onto the highways you can get. And so when we looked at the site design, we thought that was a really good idea, and then we incorporated it. So that's kind of what helped us lead us to placing the building where it was. We also looked at the future. If there was ever to be another user, they would probably be more towards the opposite side of the site. I'll say the northeast side of the site would be where another user would be.
And again, I know there'll be more testimony on this, but just briefly, the overview, lighting, landscaping, signage, and all that.
Sure. So with regards to landscaping, we're obviously doing the entire landscaping of the site. So when the building's demo, we'll do the entire landscape. We're also looking at the buffer between our facility and the residential apartments directly to the west of us. The existing buffer in there right now, which we're preserving, may be a little bit lacking some vegetation. And our engineer did a lot of research as to why. And unbeknownst to us when we drew this plan, is that area there's a lot of easements in that area. There's utility lines, both above ground and below ground. And so they actually prohibit vegetation. They actually have to cut it out. And so one of the things we're looking at, I think we're going to be back with boards, we're going to actually shift that away a little bit to be able to provide an actual landscape buffer. Utilities will stay where they are. We're going to shift our building, shift our drive-through lanes, shift that parking, and so that we'll be able to provide I think it's a required 10-foot buffer to be able to provide that. The lighting in that area, we'll bring that down to the code requires maximum height of 18 feet. We'll do that. The challenge with the rest of the parking lot, at 18-foot light heights, two things happen. One is you need more lights, a lot more light sources, which could be a little bit of an issue. But in doing so, you actually eliminate trees and other plantings from islands because you can't have trees in the same islands as lights. So even though the thought is to try and lower the lights, it's actually better to keep them at the 25 foot, which is what we would continue to ask for a waiver for, in the bulk of our parking lot, just not along the residential area.
And then just a little bit about the building
Oh, sure.
layout.
Sure. So this facility here, 5,400 square feet. It's brick on all four sides. It's fairly attractive. It's parapetted for the roof, so all the mechanical equipment is hidden. It'll have about 122 internal seats, which I realized we didn't actually send in a floor plan. That was my bad. So we'll resubmit a floor plan showing those seats there. And yeah, single story.
And what about number of employees and shifts and the like?
Sure.
And type of employees?
Sure. So the actual choice of the hiring and firing is done by the local franchisee, the operator. But typically, we find that Chick-fil-A has a total employment of somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 or so people. Sounds like a lot of folks. I'd say of those, we find that about half are actually full-time, they're half are part-time. They're not, they are obviously all in one shift. So we have multiple shifts. Typically, we'll have someone in the neighborhood of about 15 or 20 on an individual shift. Great.
I have no further questions. Mr. Martinez at this time.
I'm going to open it to members of the board for questions of the witness.
I have a question, a couple actually. With the new technology that you're using for the double drive-through, how many cars an hour do you think you could service?
Well, it really depends on the rate of cars that come there, but, I mean,
Well, I'm sorry, go off of what you're seeing in the other sites in the Northeast, you said that have the tech already.
yeah. So the ones that do, what we've actually noticed more so is that the lines aren't there, or not, certainly not as significant. So once we started implementing that, what we found is that we can handle the cars that do come to the site in a much quicker fashion. So I don't have the exact numbers, but what we can handle. But with this technology, the potential for those lines, other than maybe grand opening, to be honest with you, when we had the initial grand opening, we have some pent-up demand. You may have a little bit of lines, but once that occurs, once that is over, the amount of cars is significantly less.
Do you have any idea what the average service time is from the time a person pulls in, orders, then gets their food and leaves?
I would say it's pretty long, to be honest with you. It's in the neighborhood, I would guess, of maybe 6 to 8 minutes. They're probably there.
Okay.
Yeah. But the benefit that Chick-fil-A has to those customers, one of the reasons why we're always, not always, but probably 6 out of the last 8 years, we've been rated the #1 drive-through in America, is that we have a lot of touch points. So unlike some facilities where you just have a speaker box, we actually come out and we'll be directing cars. And part of that is psychological, is a touch point with the customer. If you feel like you're having some interaction and you're making some progress, and you talk to someone new, and you're making some progress down the line, that 6 or 8 minutes is not nearly what you think it sounds like. And so that's part of our process there and why we use that.
Right.
That ordering.
Don't take this the wrong way, I'm a little less concerned with the user experience and a little more concerned with idle time. Customers, when they sit on a long line, they play their music, especially at 9 o'clock at night. And that's why I was curious as to how long they sat online, how long your average service time was. 6 to 8 minutes actually is pretty quick. It's not that bad. But those touch points could help, I'm sure, in moving people along. You did say you had additional kitchen space in here?
Kitchen capacity, that's correct.
Right. To accommodate, I'm assuming, additional demand.
Well, we're building in, we've realized that a lot of stores that were built even 5, 6 years ago, the kitchens themselves are under capacity to be able to service our customers. So we're going back in and expanding kitchens, even stores that are only a few years old, which is crazy to me thinking about that. And so here, we're right from the get-go, we're putting in additional fryers and breading tables, thawing cabinets, things like that, that allow us to keep up with very high demand.
Okay, not to hog too much, do you guys mind if I ask one more question?
As many as you want.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that you were keeping the curb cuts the same?
On Route 22, they're exactly the same, correct?
What about on Hillside?
I believe they're the same as well, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to speak my engineering because you
It's
tweaked
okay.
it a little bit, but yeah.
I might be jumping ahead a bit, but I was curious if you or someone would be able at some point to take me through what you thought it would look like from start to finish, depending on when a car pulled in and when a car pulled out. You had mentioned that you're going to try to sort of force a certain traffic pattern. I was curious to see what that would look like depending on where they came from and where they left to.
If it's all right, I can walk through the board and kind of. Sure. I'll maybe I'll just turn on this mic, is that possible?
Jen, is it on? Yeah. Sounds
I think
I think he turned it off.
Yeah, it's working.
I did turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm not a technology person, clearly. I was gonna pick it up and hold it. I can't do that. Well, you know what, here, I can do that. So, the curb cuts along Route 22, again, referring to Exhibit A1. Route 22 is on the bottom. This is the westbound Route 22. It's labeled as eastbound, but it's actually westbound Route 22. The first driveway you come to is the entrance. So that's on the very east side. The west side is the exit. So as cars coming off of 22 would enter, they would be directed down either aisle, but we would choose to do them in the center aisle as they would come in. They would then have the choice of either going straight into the drive-through, or they could go into this parking field here, which is in the center of the site, right directly behind Chick-Fil-A. This is our Chick-fil-A trash enclosure. Here's a canopy that's for meal delivery. Here's an ordering canopy. So this Chick-fil-A drive-thru is designed to handle 39 cars. To put it in perspective, that the one in Union, I think he mentions like 17 or 18 cars. So this is more than double that alone. And what we found is, even if cars were starting to get to this point here, first of all, this site is large enough to be able to manage those cars on site. But more importantly, what we really found is that after you're requiring the car 40 or 41, if you want your food quicker, you actually just mobile order. So we've encouraged folks to mobile order part, and we'll bring up the food to them. So we would anticipate cars would enter off of 22, come down the center island. Let's use the drive-through lane. They would make this left-hand turn after stopping here, pull in, come down, order, pick up, pay, and then we'd literally be dumped out at the exit back onto 20. If those same car, if there was a Springfield resident and they're coming down Hillside, again, Hillside on this drawing is on the north side of the site. They could come into either one of these two existing curb cuts, but let's just say they come in the first one, which would be the closest one to them. They would be able to, again, come through the site, into the drive-thru, so it's fairly easy to get in. If they didn't want to go into the drive-thru, they could continue on, park, and come in. And again, after you go through the drive-thru, you still have the ability, you don't have to get onto Route 22, although it's right there. They could make that left-hand turn and come back, and then come back and leave after this.
So, I'm sorry, the preferred exit, which is that last driveway,
That is this one here on the west, I'd say the westernmost exit
Right.
of the 22 drive.
the way it's currently engineered, it is somewhat difficult to pull into there from 22.
I would think so, yeah. You're not supposed to pull in.
No, and it should be designated, in my opinion, as an exit, because there's obviously a traffic concern.
I don't want to speak for our traffic engineer, but I can tell you that my expectation is that is supposed to be an exit only, and this is an entrance only. I think, so I have no issue at all designating that way. Totally agree. I think it should be that way.
Right, just to give you a perspective, I mean, I know you live in Middlesex County, so you're probably somewhat familiar. But in order to pull into there, the last one, if they made a mistake, they'd have to jam their brakes on to get in there. And my concern is, there's a pull-on, so to speak, not too far behind that. You don't want people hitting it to get onto 22, and then all of a sudden, they're slamming their brakes on because the person 2 or 3 cars in front of them is slamming their brakes on to have chicken for breakfast. So that would be
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I certainly have no issue with that at all. Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in terms of operations, the way you're situating the restaurant is it directly abuts residential areas. My primary concern, I would say, is in terms of quality of life. I've worked next to a burger joint, and working next to a burger joint means your car and your clothes smell like grease. So explain to me how you're going to, and Chick-fil-A uses a lot of oil. Explain to me how we're not going to get
Sure.
stale odors.
Great. So there's really two main differences between how Chick-fil-A cooks their food than others. The first is it's all filet. All right, so there's two.
You're still frying it.
There's no bone or skin. So a lot of odors come from cooking skin. Yes, ma'am. Secondly, and maybe even more importantly, is it's pressure cooked, excuse me. And so it's inside of a sealed container while it's cooking. Now, it's true that when it's finished cooking, they open the container, but it's not having the odor or aroma coming out the entire time they're cooking. It's only when they open or close that device. So that any odors come up through our hoods, internal hoods, go through the proper venting, and then vents out to the roof. So I will tell you that system's worked really well for us. Our system actually meets the California standard for emissions, which is probably got to be the nation's strictest, as far as I'm aware of. And so we've had the same concerns by residential. I built a course, Chick-fil-A next to a golf course. It was next to the 17th hole, and they didn't want that. And we proved to them that you will not get that smell. You may occasionally get a little bit of an aroma. It's not impossible, but it's not an issue.
My next question is, you said deliveries, and I assume trash collection as well, take place after hours.
Trash collection, we would use the local hauler. That may be early in the morning, whenever they're out.
Okay.
But typically we would want them to come before 11 a.m.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, again, even though we're open at breakfast, it's a very, very limited part of our business, to be honest with you. And even though our trash enclosure is in a pretty good area, we wouldn't really want that trash picked up after 11 a.m.
My question is about disposal of stuff you're not throwing out. Grease, stuff like that. What is that process? Is it an after hours pick-up deposit type deal? What is that process?
Yeah, so things like grease are recycled, and we do have companies that come by, and in the past they've actually paid us to take that, but typically we have inside of our facilities a couple 100-gallon tank that grease is stored in, and it's actually pumped out routinely. How frequently? I would say it's probably once a month-ish, but it really depends on capacity.
I think it's my final question, and maybe it's for the traffic engineer. If somebody wants to enter from from Hillside Avenue, and they have a straight shot basically into the drive-through, right?
It's not exactly a straight shot. It's fairly easy, but they have a turn or two to do.
My question is, how are you going to direct or negotiate somebody, because Chick-fil-A, I've seen Chick-fil-A swamped. How are you going to negotiate somebody coming from Hillside, somebody coming from 22 in large numbers?
Right.
You know, one car is one car, but I've seen swamp numbers.
Yeah.
So what is that pattern? How's it going to be negotiated?
Great question. I was specifically asked that question internally, and that's exactly why we are doing what we're doing and being able to control the entire site. So we're going to be able to come up and we'll present this, what we call a grand opening traffic control plan. And I've done this multiple times where we'll show how, if those cars come out of that 39 spaces and starts to come into the parking lot, how we'll handle that traffic. And we'll show it with arrows, with signage. My expectation is that We will, also at the grand opening, we will hire local off-duty police officers to help us maintain that. Because the grand opening pent-up demand is a perfect storm of two things happening. It's all that pent-up demand, customers don't know the site, so when they get there, they're like, oh, where do I go? I don't know, this is all new, I've never driven a car before, I don't know what this looks like. And our team members are relatively new, right? They're new hires, so they're being trained on all the equipment, how to handle it. So you look at, that's kind of a perfect storm of issues.
Also, you've got cars backing in and out of spots.
So what Chick-fil-A has done and does is we'll bring in team members from other parts of the country that have worked at Chick-fil-A, have experienced grand openings. So we bring in what's called a grand opening team. They stay for about 3 weeks and they help train that new staff on how to handle volume of customers. It's great because when they're there providing actual one-on-one guidance with new team members and how that works. It also doesn't hurt to have a Springfield police officer there with a badge and a gun, keeping people calm as we're moving through that. And we would certainly, corporately, we would pay for that. Typically, we'll do that for the first month. Max.
I think that's it for me, for now.
Any other members of the board?
I have a couple questions.
Mm-hmm.
You briefly said before that you're going to look at the site again based on input. Are you going to move the building so you don't need a variance for setback? Is that your intention?
So we're going to move the building so we don't need a variance for the buffer, the buffer to the side yard, to the residential. In doing so, that's going to move the building further away from, I don't know if it'll comply exactly, but I think the building itself actually complies with the setback. I think it's our canopy just sticks over into it a little bit. So when we move it back, I'm not 100% sure it's going to also completely get the canopy out of the setback.
So it'll be less of a variance.
Correct.
Than what you're asking for now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in perspective, the existing building that's there today is closer. It would be closer than that. So it's definitely improving what's there today.
But it's also a quieter function. There's not cars going between the next door neighbors and the building. Would there be a detriment to your business if you were to limit deliveries and garbage to like after 8 o'clock in the morning, before 11, so that the possible residents nearby would not be disturbed by deliveries and garbage? And
So with garbage, I don't have a particular issue with that. I think that would be fine. With overnight deliveries, so that's a great question. A lot of people are concerned, they hear overnight deliveries, there's going to be a truck there, and it's going to be idling, and there's going to be noise. So I can assure you that overnight delivery I've studied personally myself. I've gone to sites 2 in the morning, I've videotaped them, I've listened to them. When a truck pulls on the site, it shuts off both engines, the truck engine and also the engine on the freezer. They use an electric pallet jack to bring the product to the building, or they use a physical hand truck. So it's a very quiet operation, and I would beg to say that, especially here, where they're bringing the product, any vehicles on 22 are going to be much louder than anything that we would have on that site. So the reason why we went to overnight deliveries, we used to have deliveries during the morning hours, in those hours, but if that truck was a little bit delayed and got there at 11 o'clock, it started impacting just the operations on the site. And what we found is by having those deliveries done when there's no one on site, not even our team members there, it's a lot safer, quicker a process, and it seems to work out better.
And do the deliveries happen with the building between the residences and the delivery, or is it on the canopy side?
So no. So the truck would be the building would be between the truck and the residence.
So that's somewhat of a buffer.
Yeah. The door, if I can get referring to exhibit A1. Typically, what I see is that truck would pull up here. The door that goes in is right here. Right here, I know this isn't working too good on transcript. So that's at the rear of the building. That would be on the north side of the building. Back of the building. North, okay, to make sure.
And then lastly, regarding that, What is the history of complaints from the neighbors with trucks and garbage and stuff on other sites where you've been near residential? Have you had many complaints with the neighbors?
So, that's kind of, it's unfair of me to answer. So I can answer that a resounding no, but in fairness, those complaints wouldn't have gone to me. Once the store opens, there's a separate person that does property maintenance similar to myself that would handle those complaints. So I can't really answer your question. I'm not aware of any large-scale issues. I'm sure there's been something, but certainly to me personally, the answer is no. I'm not aware of it.
I think that's my questions. Thanks.
Okay.
I have one more. What is the fencing level between your drive-through area and the residences?
I know there's an existing fence. Honestly, I'd rather have the civil engineer answer that question, because I don't know if it's 4 foot, 6 foot, 8 foot, and the quality of that fence. So
Bonus points if you remember.
yeah. I'm not avoiding your question. I just want to make sure I give you an accurate answer.
Understood.
No, you can't tell me.
Oh. So the existing fence is a 6-foot board-on-board fence, which is relatively good condition, but there are some, I guess, slats missing in a few locations.
That was there previously, you said?
It was. It's an existing fence,
That's
correct.
the same fence.
So you want to fix any slats?
Well, so part of the reason, yes, we would, but part of the reason why we we want to actually pull our site away is that's in an easement area. And so typically easements don't allow things like fencing and landscaping. So we're going to actually make sure that we pull that away, and we'll provide in our own full landscape buffer. And if there's a section of fence missing, I will assure you, it will go in the landscape buffer where I'm allowed to put. I'm not allowed to put it into the easement.
Sure. I mean, my concern is because, as Mr. Poltrock pointed out, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., people play loud music. And again, for me, it's a quality of life thing. So that's why,
Understood.
that's a concern for me.
It's fair. I can't control customers.
I know, but I'm just,
The only thing I can control
preempting.
is art, but yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
As much buffering as possible would be my answer,
Okay.
and the buffering can help.
I'm now done.
You get bonus points for being done.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yes. Briefly.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about employee training to handle the high volume moment. Do you remember that? How often does that training happen?
So, new employees, and I say just new team members that are just hired, especially when the store first opens, they'll have training for 3 weeks with other team members similar to themselves. So Chick-fil-A has, it's called a grand opening team process. It's actually kind of a real benefit for a lot of team members. So if you live in Kansas, I'm just gonna pick up a state, you have the ability to join this team, and they will take you for a 6-month tour and put you at all different locations, whether it's California, New York, Florida, and you will be on part of the grand opening team. So first of all, for them, not only do they get paid, they get a great experience to be able to travel the country and have Chick-fil-A pay for it, and they get parts of the country they may never have seen. But more importantly for us, is they're able to then show these new team members how it is, how they can process the food quickly, how to handle customers, how to move customers along, how to, basically provide that customer service. So that's direct, it's typically about 3 weeks right at the very beginning that's done. Other newer team members that are hired, the operator has training manuals and programs that they institute to bring new folks up to speed on how to provide customer service. And that's a Chick-fil-A hallmark, quite honestly, is providing that customer service, that touch point with customers.
And when you say team members versus at the grand opening program, you mean all employees that work at the location, at a Chick-fil-A location?
Yeah, they're not really, they're team members. The ones that are based in Springfield here, those are the team members there. Separately, they bring in additional members. Their team members elsewhere in the country come in for that training and they help train all those new folks.
And what's the turnover rate for Chick-fil-A employees on sites?
Wow, that's a great question. I wouldn't know that, again, I'm not an operator, so all hiring and firing and all that is handled by the local operator. So I don't have the exact number. I really don't. I would be doing you a disservice.
Fair. My concern is the institutional knowledge that will come at the beginning, at the grand opening phase. I'm just concerned that if there's turnover personnel-wise, will that survive during high volume times later on past the honeymoon stage if the restaurant opens?
So it does, and actually it improves, because those team members that are there from the beginning, they pass it on to the new hires. They get to learn, they see by example, they lead by example. And typically the managers will be much more stable than staff, and they provide that training.
Thank you.
Who trains the operators?
Great question. So there's, Chick-fil-A corporate, so to Chick-fil-A corporate, we only choose who the operator is. That's the only employment choice we make there. Approximately 70,000 people a year apply to become a Chick-fil-A operator. That's probably about 2 years old. That's probably a little low now, but that's the amount of folks that apply. Of those 70,000 people, we pick maybe 50, maybe 60 people. And so they're vetted through a process. I can assure you that they would never accept me. All right, I'm just saying, yeah. But they're looking for a certain individual that's able to give back to the community. So it's really important for Chick-fil-A to find the right operator. That's the number one thing that we do. And that operator is not someone that's necessarily, you know, a very wealthy individual. What's interesting to find that the franchise fee for Chick-fil-A, it's a $10,000 deposit. So we're not, when the company was started, when Truett Cathy founded it, he wasn't looking for someone to give him money. He was looking for someone to partner with to run that business. So that choice of operator is all important. It really is. And so new operators will go through once they're selected, through an extensive training course. And to be selected, I wish I knew how that's done. If I could, I'd write a book and become a millionaire. But it's pretty extensive.
Okay.
Any other motion?
Thank you.
You played a role in the site location?
I don't choose the location, but yes, on the design of the site I do, yes.
On the design of the site?
Correct.
Not choosing the location?
I know. There's a real estate team and a strategist that looks at big picture, you know, where we want to be, and we lovingly refer to it as a green dot on the map. We want to be in Springfield, and we have a real estate person manager similar to me that works with a local broker to find sites, and they'll look at multiple sites. I mean, even in Springfield, I can tell you I've looked at multiple locations in Springfield over the years to try and find a location, and they don't work for lots of reasons. I look at more sites that end up dying than moving forward with. But I'll look at all of those sites and I'll site plan them out. I can tell you I've never site planned a site this large with this much flexibility, which I love, in the sense that I know that I can handle anything that's thrown at me based on how we run our operation and the physical size of this site, that we're not going to be impacting the Route 22 or hillside.
Okay. Do you know if, when looking at this site, the choice was in place of Union or in addition to alleviate demand in Union?
I can absolutely answer that question. So it was not to replace Union. It was to help the capacity of Union.
Okay.
So I was involved in when Union got built as well. So I'm familiar with that site there and the choice that was there. Honestly, it was a different day for Chick-fil-A. Even though that site's been busy the entire time, the amount of business we get, it's a blessing, right? I mean, it's a good thing, but we have to be able to handle it appropriately. And so the choice of having a site like this just allows us as an organization to handle the anticipated customer demand better.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, I'm going to turn it over to our professionals. I'm just going to, members of the board, any other questions? Okay.
Just following up on Chairwoman Cohen's, make sure it's coming up. Chairwoman Cohen's question, you mentioned that there was a lot of flexibility in designing the site. And I just wanted to ask if it was, your decision or a combination of decision with engineering team to situate the building in this portion of the site.
Sure. So I can tell you, yeah, with a relatively blank slate, relatively, there are some things that are fixed. So access points are fixed, probably being the most notable. We looked at a lot of different conversations, a lot of different layouts, had a lot of conversations. I think that some of the advice that we've gotten along the way really lent us to this configuration. The main one being the encouragement of our customers when they get their food to be able to go back out onto Route 22. This location here, I think, speaks volumes to maximizing that suggestion. And so, again, it also has a benefit for Chick-Fil-A. It has great visibility to Route 22 as you're approaching the site. You're going to see the store. So that is good for us. The ability, just because how cars line up and passenger, the driver's side, this design here allows a fairly large stack. So that's all well. Conversely, when we looked at what we could do in the future, we did a lot of different layouts for additional things in the future. We've actually in some ways, we've actually penned ourselves in to a little bit of a corner because now whoever would go there goes in the back. And so we're trying to look at that. How do eventually do we make that even exciting for another tenant? So if you're a self-storage tenant, to use that as an example, that may be fine. Like you maybe want to be in the back there, and that may be you wouldn't necessarily need all this parking. But we're trying to make sure that we're not painting ourselves into a corner.
Sure.
So this particular, we feel pretty good about how the building located on the site.
And were you aware that these sites only border with a residential neighborhood is directly adjacent to the
Understood.
property? And, some other uses are not as intense as a full drive-through, especially where you don't have a dining room open right now. So, most of your activity is going to happen on that border with residential neighborhood. So, I just wanted to, point out that it may be ideal for visibility, which I think also Chick-fil-A has, enough of a presence, let's say, that maybe the visibility isn't the highest and best need on the site. And then additionally, I just had another question. As you mentioned, there might be an additional user in the future after, you've seen how the operations run on the site. Has the parking layout been designed and the parking islands been designed, to be constructed after this approval, or are they going to kind of be banked for the future? Because obviously, as it's designed, if another building is put on the site, it has to change.
Yeah, so great question. I'm going to answer the second one first. So,
Sure.
We did look at, what we do to put on there and kind of design something for the future, but honestly, we're prejudging that. We're prejudging what that future tenant may be. So to answer your specific question, no, the site hasn't been designed for a specific user or tenant. So we realize that parking on there is going to definitely change. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we left parking on there for a couple of reasons. One, it actually allows us to make sure it's maintained. Sounds a bit crazy, but if it's just left in a wooded weed state, it may attract something that's maybe not desirable. Here it's going to be maintained. We're going to maintain the parking lot. Chick-fil-A does not need all 270 spaces. But it also has the benefit that we do need to drive aisles, because we also want to make sure that what I just said to the board is going to remain. That is, if and when that huge demand comes, we're going to be able to have those cars on our site and keep them on our site. So we need the drive aisles for all of that anyway. So the thought was, let's come up with a plan where we can kind of make sure we have enough drive aisles, enough staffing, that we can absolutely keep everyone on our site. Doesn't prevent us from doing anything in the future. And also, from the perspective of being a good steward of what's been entrusted to us, does it make sense to rip up all the asphalt just to put it back down again, like, that's not a good use of resources either. So rather than making that decision today, we said, we're, you know, somewhat postponing it for the future, but we're giving ourselves, all of us, options. And again, I stand by what I say, and, you know, is that I think it's kind of unique, right? You don't usually get the opportunity as a township to look at something and say, hey, we're gonna get a second bite at this. And now we're gonna know once Chick-fil-A is there, and we see what impact or not we have, we'll have actual data, we'll have actual traffic counts. And then when we come back in for another user, I think we're gonna make a really good educated decision at that point. But
So just to clarify, you are going to construct the parking islands as shown
correct.
on the
Yeah,
site plan?
we agree to do that.
Sure.
But what I will also say is based on some of the comments we received from this group and some of the comments we're receiving tonight, we are gonna make some modifications.
Sure.
Specifically, we're gonna pull the entire operation a little bit further east. Okay, I don't know, I'm having trouble with north,
East,
south, yeah. And so that will help to, you know, we're gonna lose some parking.
Sure. My question was only related to, as we talked about circulation, I think some of the board members asked you to walk them through the site. You know, if there was another tenant, another building, another use that was put on the site, the configuration of these drive aisles is subject to change. The configuration and the circulation of the site as far as a normal customer coming could change the very moment that a new use is approved and built. And so, you know, that idea that now we know how the site operates could completely change, right? Once it's redesigned and reconstructed.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would completely change. I do agree with you that once you put a new user on there, you're gonna change some of those aisles, there'll be a little difference. But I wouldn't say it would completely change. I mean, again, access points wouldn't change, necessarily Chick-fil-A drive-through wouldn't change. Maybe some of the drive aisles would, but by then, customers are gonna know, hey, here's Chick-fil-A, we know how to get here, where there's no more pent-up demand for Chick-fil-A. And so I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that. But
Yeah.
that's how we approached it. I mean, we're certainly willing to listen to the board if they see something different.
Sure. I'm just saying because as a, you know, planner, the unknowns of the future, I try and get ahead of them. And so, you know, seeing a site plan, seeing what something is proposed to be built as, and, you know, testified to, you always have to wonder, you know, what's the next step after it does change. So that's for my question. Thank you.
Just a couple. I believe at the end of your testimony, you said 122 indoor. I think the documents say 102. The 122 or 102 on the seating.
Let's see. Well, actually, great, thank you for that. We're actually looking to put outdoor seating as well. So we would have 102 seats inside and 20 outdoor seats.
Oh.
That's I should have clarified that.
Okay, and then the other thing was, when you mentioned the separate door area, the segregation of the mobile or the third-party users, I looked at the floor plan, and I'm just trying to get a sense, maybe it's better for somebody with the architectural plan, but how would that happen?
Sure.
In other words,
What I can do,
when I'm looking at the doors here.
what I can do, I don't have it with you, but I can provide a color drawing that kind of shows that area. So I'll provide it that shows that.
Those were the only questions I had based upon.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one suggestion, picking up on what you talked about, the traffic coming in from Hillside. In that westerly driveway, you described the traffic as coming straight in, and make a couple turns, which is perfect. I would just say for opening, if there was some way to sort of cone that off so it forces everybody straight in, so you don't have like people coming in and immediately trying to turn left and then backing stuff up on the hillside.
Yeah, that's fine. We can work with the traffic engineer when we develop the traffic circulation plan for Grand Opening.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open it up to members of the public if you have any questions for this witness. Please come up to the podium. Good evening.
Evening. My name is Isa Stevens. I'm actually one of the residents that's on that, the houses across from that area. So some of my questions to you guys are, you mentioned that you don't know exactly how many cars per hour, as he was trying to find out. Do you know how many cars per day that go through the drive-through average for this area?
Yeah, so what I would do is, our traffic engineer has those standards. Again, I don't want to speak from cars per day, like coming out of driveways. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, so I don't have the
Okay, so
exact
that'll be-
number, but we can provide the number of trips, like, what we call trips, those cars in and out
Okay.
per day.
Because I mean, obviously, like, as stated, 6 to 8 minutes is no biggie for one car, 10 cars, but when you're talking about a whole day, that adds up, right? My other question is, do you have designated people to actually walk around the parking lot and clean up? Or, 'cause again, you say you cannot control the customers, right? There's obviously always littering. Is there someone who's gonna be walking around, picking up on a windy day that's gonna end up right in front of my house? Is there someone gonna be designated, 1 or 2 people, it is a large area, to walk around and make sure that there are no garbage left over by someone who parked, had a quick lunch, and just didn't bother to go to wherever the garbage bin is?
Great question. So, two things. One, we will have some exterior trash, receptacles. But you're right, some people just get lazy and either throw it or maybe it falls. So yes, there are people that, amongst other things, will be out there picking up trash. Typically, we ask, corporately, we ask them to look at their site once an hour, to walk through, to pick up anything, because we don't want our customers seeing whether it's spilled, French fries or sandwich or trash against the fence that's blowing around. So typically, that's what they'll do, once an hour.
Okay. All right, and as far as, I mean, like you guys said, the area is pretty big. Do you really need an entrance on the Hillside Avenue side? Couldn't you add a second, I'm not talking about an exit point, but would you be able to add a second entry point on the Route 22 side, so when there is an oops, I missed my entrance, they could still have a second chance to get into the area, right? And not bother with Hillside at all, because like what's gonna happen is that people are gonna get out, and once they know the area, now they can turn back into Hillside and make that quick U-turn. Like you said, this is in addition to Union, correct? It's not like the Union one is moving.
No, you
So
just
people,
say that.
right, so people from the east are gonna be coming in, they're gonna find out that they can come out of, on Hillside Avenue, make that very quick U-turn, and that's gonna cause a lot of issues.
Yeah.
So is that absolutely necessary?
So, I mean, so you're, just so I'm clear, you're saying that cars would be able to leave out on the hillside, come down here, and again, here is, on the north, go north, and make this turn, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
And that right now is already a point of issue, because it's a very quick U-turn, right? And Route 22 can get really busy, or just cars, because it opens up, the traffic opens up after a certain point from Union, and then everybody starts speeding up, and as soon as that happens, people try to make that U-turn. Now, if you have a lot of cars coming up trying to get back on east, they're still gonna come this way, or they're gonna try to take the other side to go back to 22, which is coming up to Hillside.
So again, I don't want to speak for the traffic engineer, but I do know that the challenge is, the DOT is not going to allow us to put it in our driveway here. And again, I don't want to speak for the traffic engineer. Also, when the DOT looks at the site, I mean, they do look at this access point here as something that needs to stay. But I would feel more comfortable if the traffic engineer gives you that exact answer, because I'm not a traffic engineer.
Okay. And if anything, could it be just an entry point, not an exit point, period?
Oh,
I
so
think
just
that's
like
something.
the cars come in and
Correct.
everyone's got to leave at that spot.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Stephanie Jackman, and I actually live directly across the street on 50 Hillside, right there. There are a lot of kids on that street, on the neighborhood. Many of us have kids, right? And there's really a big concern for the hazardous that this is going to bring in the traffic. And I'm not really sure we're getting like clear answers today. There were like a lot of questions asked.
We're limiting it just to questions of the witness.
Yeah.
We are going to allow the public
Okay.
to comment at
Okay.
the close this evening, and if this continues on to another meeting.
Okay, so with the 6 to 8 minutes, right, that was discussed, so what happens to the customers that are waiting in line for 20, 40 minutes? And then what happens to those customers who are now, the seating's gonna be outside with all of the traffic, the noise, the lights?
Okay. So, again, I'm gonna start with your, so as far as any outdoor seating,
Yeah.
it would be limited to the area right around the building. And it would be no different than we've done in other locations where we've added outdoor seating. So even on Route 22 in Watchung, we went actually back to the board after it was built and added some seating, and I believe Union's got some as well. So it's seasonal. I mean, this time of year, yeah, you're not going to be sitting outside. But on some of those nice days, that's an opportunity. We do have it typically fenced in, not fencing like chain link fencing, but more decorative fencing. So that tends to keep it a little bit better contained, as well as any trash. We'll have trash receptacles out there. The cars that, again, our expectation is that, other than grand opening, we're gonna plan for that little bit of pent-up demand, that the majority of cars will be able to stay in that. And I say that from the perspective of, we've studied that, the locations that are open. Our traffic engineer will talk to that, where even during COVID, we had them study Route 17 and Ramsey. They studied, I don't even know all the locations, you go with that, but very busy locations. And what we found is, once we started implementing a lot of these procedures for outdoor ordering, that the lines significantly reduced.
So what happened in Union, right, because I drive to the Union one all the time, right? There was heavy congestion that I believe it was even shut down by the police officers, right, in that area, because there was so much congestion. There were a lot of accidents. And so, like, can you give me an example of, like, how that situation was taken care of? And
Yeah, well, I can tell you a couple of things that are different than the Union side. So once in Union, once you come out of the drive-through, and you're car number 19, you're not in the drive-through stack anymore. You're physically in the entrance off of Route 22. And so there are do not block boxes that were installed to try and minimize that. Here, you know, we have cars, even if you're parked 40, you're not anywhere near any of the roadway, whether it's hillside or that. So just because of the size of the site, we're going to be able to manage all of that traffic on site. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Union was built, I think it was 10, 12 years ago. It's certainly designed before that. It doesn't have all the same technology. The building is probably 1,000 square feet smaller, and it's you know, that means the kitchen's that much smaller. We've got the ability to manage traffic and capacity here so much more. It's really a night and day difference.
okay, and then you mentioned you would have police officers on site, I guess, the first month, but what happens post?
Sure.
Right, the traffic, the noise,
I can answer it. So corporately, I would commit to doing that, right? If there's a need for whatever reason, then that expense goes to the operator. The thing is, I don't want to commit for the operator that they're going to have that expense, but I can tell you, if there's a need for whatever reason, they'll hire officers. So in Union, we've done that when there's a need. So in other jurisdictions, so if there's a need, the operators will take care of that. But I can't commit to that. I can only commit to what I can control, and I will do that for the first month.
okay. All right. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Simon. I live on 82 Hillside Avenue. So your traffic engineers have obviously been out there. They see that it's one lane each way. It is a main artery to Route 22. From what I'm hearing, it's not likely that you'll be closing the two exits and entrances on Hillside Avenue. I think it's been addressed a few times, and you were like, no. But is it possible to make them for emergency vehicles only? Therefore, the backup will not be so prominent on Hillside Avenue. As it already is, it's pretty bad. And I live across the street from apartments, and there are traffic stops and speeding every night, and it will only get worse. It takes me, out of a long work day, a long time to get into my driveway. So it is definitely an issue. Listen, I'm all for, free enterprise and Chick-fil-A and, but it is a quality of life that is now going to be a little worse.
I'm sorry, can you please limit it to questions?
Okay, so the question is, if you do not close those entrances, is it a possibility to make them for emergency vehicles only? Fire trucks, policemen, ambulances, et cetera? Is that something that your corporation will consider?
I think the idea of closing is really, is the issue, and I'd have to have our traffic engineer speak to that, because that potentially has other issues. Our expectation is to have these full movement, these driveways, so,
Yeah.
we wouldn't take that closing them lightly, but, I'd have to defer to my traffic engineer.
Okay, so that's my second question is, has any Chick-fil-A ever been robbed, armed robbed, that you know of?
Robbed, absolutely. So, we had a band of thieves based in Texas that hit about over 50 locations. They would hit it on Sunday, and they'd steal the safe out of the store. Probably an inside job, yeah. Safe company.
Because the 7-Eleven right across the street has been robbed several times.
Yeah.
So I know you're committed to community, but community safety is also an issue.
It is.
So if, please take that under consideration. Also,
Yeah, and on that point, so we do have a very active safety group at Chick-fil-A. Besides the normal cameras and those types of things on site that monitor that, they do work with the local police. We do investigate locations, see what kind of crimes are occurring, and prohibit and stop. So I'll give you an easy example. One of my territories was DC, and we were in locations where there were some challenges. We worked with the local police. We made the actual how our team members interact with the customers, how we made that operate was much safer. So yes, to your point, safety of our team members is super important for us. We want to make sure they make it home
and the community
and the community as well.
surrounding. Another question is, so it's tough to get employees to work these days. How confident is Chick-fil-A in getting employees to operate this location? Do they have people lined up? When do you plan on breaking ground? Is there an interview process beforehand? How many employees does it take to run a Chick-fil-A of this size?
So our total employment with team members is somewhere around 80 folks. So of that, probably more than half are typically full-time employees. So that's a lot of people. The operator's constantly looking for folks. So the operator, the person that we contract with to operate the facility, no issue finding operators there. That's an issue. Those operators will look for team members, but they typically don't actually look for team members until about 6 weeks to 8 weeks before they start actually selling chicken. Just because those folks aren't going to hang around without being paid.
Right.
We typically pay a little bit higher than the going rate, just to try and attract those team members. It's very challenging. It's tough work. As a person that worked for corporate Chick-fil-A, I'm required to once a day a year work at a Chick-fil-A store, whether it's making sandwiches, whatever. I can tell you, I'm ill-equipped to do that. But I appreciate the effort that those folks do. So we give them a lot of advantages. So there's things like we pay for education, we give grants. And the grants can be anywhere from $2,500 to $25,000 to allow them to go to school. We also give them training. We're hoping to find them to become assistant managers and move up. Quite a few of the folks that work their way up become operators. Not everyone, but there's an opportunity, there's a path to do that. So that's what we try and encourage our team members to do, to look to that future.
So Amazon gives a signing bonus. Does Chick-fil-A to their employees?
I'm not, corporately, that would be up to the local commission. I'm not aware of that.
And when do you plan on breaking ground, and when do you plan on your grand opening date to be? Anticipated.
Yeah, if all goes well, we hope to break ground. We have, I think it's the end of the summer or thereabouts. We should be, and then it's usually about 5 or 6 months to So that would bring us to 23.
Oh, let's have a good year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Schwartz, 164 Wentz Avenue. And just for the record, I'm a member of the Springfield Planning Board, but I'm here tonight in my individual capacity. I want to follow up, Mr. Martinez, if I could, just to clarify. You're familiar with the site and the proposed business operation and what would make it sustainable, is that right?
Correct.
So, and part of that has to do with the flow of traffic.
Sure.
So would it be a detriment to this Chick-fil-A location if approved if the hillside was entrance only and no exit?
I mean, that's certainly something that we did not anticipate when we were looking at the site. We would have to look at that to see if we were, again, I would imagine that would be an issue, but I don't want to dismiss it.
From a business perspective, is that something you could report to the board on at the next session on this application?
What do you mean from a business perspective?
Well, I mean, you keep deferring on the issue of the inflow and outflow of traffic to the traffic engineer. I'm not concerned with the traffic engineer at this point. I'm interested in the sustainability of the site to the operator. Does he need for traffic to come in and out off of Hillside from a business planning perspective?
So I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. So the New Jersey Department of Transportation, as part of the permit we're getting, they are participating in that driveway. If these driveways, if that doesn't occur, that may rule that out. So I need to understand what all those ramifications are.
In the application to the New Jersey Department of Transportation, has Chick-fil-A proposed an option where there is no entrance or exit on Hillside?
I don't think, I'm looking at the traffic engineer, and the answer is no.
So then the Department of Transportation hasn't actually considered that because it hasn't been put forward to them. If this board granted conditional approval subject to the DOT approving a site plan that did not have an entrance and exit on Hillside, would that be a detriment to the business?
I would have to first go see if I can even continue to operate this business with that. I'm not sure I'd have a DOT permit.
Right. Well, again, if it's, all right. If I heard you correctly earlier, you testified that the building model is, for emissions, is designed to satisfy the California emission standards. And from your understanding, those are more strict than the New Jersey standards?
This is my understanding, is correct.
Would Chick-fil-A commit to meeting those California standards as a condition for granting of a variance?
We do that, we put those standards in all of our prototypes, so it's already there.
That wasn't my question, Mr. Martinez. My question was, would Chick-fil-A commit as a condition to obtaining a use variance to satisfying those California emission standards?
Yeah, I'm not sure I thought, because I think we already do, so.
But you don't have to. It may be in your design, but you could change that. I'm asking whether or not you would commit to satisfying the California emission standards and not having the option of lowering to a different standard.
I would say, to answer your question, I don't want to commit to today, but I think that would be fine, but we will research that, and I can get back and confirm that that's the case.
Now, in terms of the property, has Chick-fil-A already closed on the purchase of the property, or is it conditioned on obtaining a variance?
We're not buying the property, we're just leasing the property.
You're leasing the property. Has Chick-fil-A committed to a lease of the property?
We have a lease of the property. We haven't started, the lease hasn't commenced, we have a signed lease for the property.
Is there an option to terminate the lease if you don't obtain a use variance?
If we don't obtain permits, correct.
Okay. In terms of the operation, you said that it has the capacity to handle 39 cars. In what time frame?
That's the stacking. It can handle 39 cars stacked in that drive-through. Car number 40 would be hanging out of the drive.
Okay. And for there to be a situation where there would be 39 cars there, what's the time frame for that size to build up, typically?
Grand opening excluded, because it's a little hard to predict
Fair enough.
that. Our recent studies, we don't even hit 39 cars, I believe. We don't even hit that.
In order for this site to be profitable, how many trips do you need per day?
We don't even know how to calculate profitability based on trips.
How does Chick-fil-A calculate profitability in looking at new sites?
We have a strategic folks to look at that. That's not my role.
So it's outside of
Yeah.
your knowledge? Okay. Since this site is twice as large spatially and also, I guess, in terms of capacity as, say, the Union site, is there a higher cost to the operator?
Operator pays a percentage of the, to us in rent, and that's based on a strict percentage. So it's really based on sales. So not directly, no. However, the operator is going to be responsible for maintaining this, and so that comes out of their profit and our profit that we split with them.
And from what I understand, which I didn't just looking at the site before you testified, is that it sounds as if it's inevitable that Chick-fil-A is going to come back to this board to expand and put another business 2, 3, 4 onto the site at some point. Is that fair?
I wouldn't say inevitable, but certainly, I said to the board, I would expect that we will be back to Springfield at some point in the future with an application for another user on this. Don't know who that is. It's really going to be dependent on what the site can handle at that time.
Who pays the rent for that lease we were just discussing for the site?
Chick-fil-A corporate.
Okay. And then Chick-fil-A corporate makes its money from a percentage of the profits from the operator?
We take some money off the top, and then, yeah, basically we split the profits. It's in the cash register, all expenses are paid. We get a percentage of that.
And based on the expectations for this site, would that amount of money coming into Chick-fil-A corporate be enough to at least break even on this lease?
Oh, yeah. So we have gotten permission. If we decide that there's no opportunity for another user here, Chick-fil-A will continue to operate. We can sustain this on our own without another user.
Even if it means taking a loss?
Yeah, but that would, yes. To answer your question, yeah. Even if it took a loss, I would not anticipate.
Okay, so then it would not be a detriment to Chick-fil-A corporate if the only approval ever received for the site was for the restaurant?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It would?
No, of course. Why would we be singled out and we couldn't have another user on the site where everyone else can? We're only, if you look at the percentage of use on this site, we're allowed 40% lot coverage, building coverage. We're allowed like 2%. So why would we be subject to some sort of arbitrary ability to not allow us to get full use of this property, assuming that the property can handle it, the traffic and all that can handle it? Yeah, that would be, I would consider that arbitrary, to be honest with you.
In a typical Chick-fil-A, what is the flow rate of trips per day, trips per hour, whatever the measure is you're familiar with?
So again, I would probably have our traffic engineer talk about it, because they actually study existing locations, and they have that information.
Okay, that's outside your area.
Well, it's not something I commit to memory, to be honest with you, but they do. They physically count that.
Okay. From operations perspective, what's the busiest times of day?
Great question. So we basically have what we call 4 day parts. Breakfast, least busiest. I can almost guarantee it's going to be our least busiest. Lunch, so that's somewhere between 11 and 2 o'clock-ish, 1 o'clock-ish. Historically, it's been very busy, but what we found is there's actually a 3rd day part now. There's actually from 2 to 5. It seems like people, maybe because they're working from home, that lunch hour is bled into the dinner hour. So here, I would anticipate probably a lunch hour, maybe into the dinner hour, because we are kind of on the going home side of traffic. Would be our busiest.
Okay, so that's 3. You said there were 4.
Well, there's dinner. Dinner is like 5 to 8. Lunch is 11 to 1 or 2. You have breakfast, which is 6:30 to 11, and then you have that middle afternoon, which is the 4th one.
And how would you rank those in terms of from busiest to least busy?
Oh, great. It's hard to say for sure, but typically I would anticipate that we would probably be busiest at dinner time, and then probably lunch, afternoon, and then certainly morning.
So then the busiest time of day, roughly 5 to 8 p.m. at the same time that the traffic crunch is coming down 22 West.
That's exactly right.
All right, thank you.
Because we're getting most of our traffic from 22.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just jump in, because I think 4 people have mentioned Hillside Avenue, and although we haven't heard traffic testimony on it, the one thing that, and I just spoke with Jay real quick about it, is to limit Hillside Avenue to entrance only. is not good for Springfield people who are accessing the site. It forces them to go onto Route 22 to go back, make the right, or the jug handle, back to the center area of Springfield. So for Springfield residents, to limit them to entrance only from Hillside, not a good thing. You're forcing them to not drive on Hillside Avenue to go back home, but forcing them to go on 22. So I just want to make that point, that we've heard that bandied about a couple times already or requested. Not sure that's a smart thing for Springfield people, okay? So maybe we should limit the conversation on that aspect of Hillside Avenue in and out until we hear the traffic.
Can I ask Mr. Disco a follow-up to his comment?
Sure.
Thank you. What if the exit out of the site onto Hillside was left turn only?
So that wouldn't restrict Springfield residents.
Exactly.
Right, unless they was a Springfield resident, for some reason chose the Hillside to go west rather than 22 exit west. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be very brief. Good evening.
Can you just, sorry, state your
sorry,
name
yes.
and address for the record,
Yes,
please?
Jed Weiner, 5 South Derby Road, Springfield. First question I had is, does Chick-Fil-A, as part of their process in applying for a site like this, conduct any type of study on air quality or pollution from a drive-through that can stack 40 cars for up to, I don't know how many hours a day?
I'm not sure there's a specific study that we do for this location here. That's what you're asking.
In general, is that something that Chick-fil-A does?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Is that something they could do?
I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish there. I mean, with such a.
Well, let me give you an example. When I go to pick up my child at school, I can't idle my car for more than 3 minutes, or I'm breaking the law. I have to shut my car. What's the operating hours of the Chick-fil-A that you're proposing?
6:30 in the morning to 10 o'clock at night.
So from 6:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, there's the possibility of at least 40 or more cars idling all day long, correct?
I'm not sure I'd make that nexus. I mean, just because we have capacity to handle 39 cars, it doesn't mean that there's going to be 39 cars in there at all times running and not moving. I think you misunderstand the ability to have capacity as to what the actual usage is, and no one knows what the actual usage is going to be. All we can do is look at existing stores that are maybe somewhat similar, and that's what we asked our traffic engineer to do, is look at some other locations that were reasonably similar, on busy highways, and had similar capacity to store cars.
Does Chick-fil-A keep statistics with respect to the number of calls for service that are made to police, fire, ambulances at its locations?
Chick-fil-A corporate, not that I'm aware of that we have that now.
So, for example, you wouldn't have statistics on the number of times the Union Police had to respond to the Chick-fil-A and Union on Route 22?
I don't have access to that. I'm not sure if that's kept by the local operator. I don't think corporately we track that.
Okay. So you wouldn't know the number of vehicle accidents that occurred, let's say, in the past year at the Chick-fil-A on Route 22 in Union?
I do not know that.
But the drive-through capacity that you're proposing here is roughly twice the size of what's in Union?
The ability to handle that car is actually over twice. So we have more ability to handle cars on site in that drive-through queue and not have them spill into the parking lot or by the driveway entrances.
Okay. One last question. Do you also have the ability to conduct any type of noise study when you're at, say, your busiest time period? What level of noise is generated from the property?
Yeah, so agreed. I mean, I can tell you that the things that generate noise at a Chick-fil-A, like the speaker boxes, we do have those with what they call ABC, automatic volume control. So if the ambient sound is quieter, the actual speakers are quieter. Like I said, I can't control if a customer pulls up with a loud music blaring, I can't control that. But the items that we do control, they are certainly well within any kind of standards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I live on 90 Hillside. My name's Lauren Jankunas. Lauren Jankunas. 90 Hillside? Yeah. I was wondering if you perform background checks on your employees.
Great question. I don't know for stores, because the operators hire them directly, so I don't know if there's a background check. There may be, but I'm just not aware.
Okay. And can you also perform a traffic study?
We did, yeah.
You did do it?
Well, I didn't personally, but
Right.
my traffic engineer did, correct.
Okay. And the outdoor seating's 122 seating?
Yeah, so we'll have 20 outdoor seats.
20.
So that's typically 5 tables of 4.
Okay.
And then inside the store will be 102 seats.
Okay, and 30 days out from grand opening, if there is still complaints and problems, will you possibly propose police presence and pay for it?
So that decision would just be our operator. And so to answer your question, I can't commit that they would do that, but if there's an issue that they need police there for traffic
Because
control.
I
whatever.
really don't think that we should be paying for our police to be there, and I know there's going to be problems.
Yeah, so typically they hire off-duty officers, so there's usually a program. I can't speak specifically to Springfield at this point, but we'll typically hire, no different than like road work, you see like on a side of a highway contractor, the contractor's paying it, the public's not paying that, or police officer. We would do the same type of thing.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other members of the public that have questions for this witness? Thank you. Mr. Hale, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We will not be taking new testimony after 9, and we are going to allow public comment at the close of the next witness's testimony. So I just want the public to be aware of that. We will let you speak at the end of the next witness's testimony, and clearly we will be carrying to the next meeting. So 5-minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene.
Good day.
Okay, the time is 8:25, and we will reconvene. Thank you. Yes, Mr.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. After discussing it with our development team, and we appreciate the questions of the board and the public to Mr. Martinez, being that we are planning on making changes to the project, rather than bring our site engineer up and say, okay, well, here's what our buffer was, but we plan to change it to this. I think it makes sense that we not move forward with our site engineer, who is going to be our next witness, come back at the next hearing, and he can then we'll obviously have submitted revised plans, say, this is what we had proposed originally, and in response to the questions from the board and the board professionals and the public, this is what we propose now. And we may briefly also recall Mr. Martinez to answer some other questions that were raised, but if the board would indulge us, we think that would make a lot of sense and save time and have, again, the board look at revisions that are made in response to your professionals and the board.
We are in agreement with that.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we are going to.
Happy New Year.
The application is going to continue on January 18th. There will be additional testimony. There will be additional witnesses that are called. You will have an opportunity to speak at the close of the applicant's presentation. However, we are going to open this up to the public right now for any comments. So if you have any comments on the application that you wish to make at this time, please come up. And
Madam Chair, if I may.
yes.
Just for the record, there will be no more public notice of the new hearing because it is being announced tonight. So there won't be publication, the 200-foot list. You will not get further notice of that hearing. And also, if you come up to comment, we will need your name and address again, and you will have to be sworn in.
Again, the date that this is carried to is January 18th.
What time?
6 p.m. Any members of the public that wish to come up and speak at this time? Good evening.
Name is Chris Weber, 53 South Maple Avenue, Springfield. Just want to,
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
yes.
Thank you.
It's more of a comment to the members of the board. Thank you for your hard work. My phone just shut off in the middle of my comment. You do a great job. Whatever decision you make on this, it's not an easy decision. You are professionals who represent Springfield very well, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hi. Lauren Jankunas, 90 Hillside Ave. I've been a resident, yes. Oh, sorry.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I've been a resident there for about 10 years, and I'm concerned for safety, environmental, real estate, obviously. Some people that live on the street, their direct view is going to be a Chick-Fil-A. That's concerning. The pollution, you know, obviously. I walk my kids, I walk my dog, I pick up trash. You know, it's all already there. 3 pedestrians have been hit on Hillside and from September to now. I think that's a moot point. Safety is main. We cross the street, we walk around, I pick up my kids from school. It's all pretty relative, and I'm concerned for the safety. That's just the main. And the traffic is just people, you know, blowing the lights, everything else. It's just a problem. So I don't think there's anything else I have to say. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stevens, 56 Hillside Avenue.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I mean, just to add on to the main concern of specifically those that live right on that street, it's just if you know Springfield, you know that anything that happens in that little bit of hillside affects everything up to mountain and past that area. So to make it more, especially when the busiest time is supposed to be around, you know, the time that the school gets out and the time that the traffic picks up because of rush hour. And I know it's not the same as it was before because of COVID and people working from home, but it's still significant. So adding on to that by, I guess, putting something in there that I don't feel is needed because that area is already big enough to house, to basically curve everything around to go out of 22. That entry point is not needed on Hillside, an exit point is not needed on Hillside. And I understand that somebody brought up, what about the residents that live in Springfield? Would they want to get back on 22? Ask the same residents of Springfield, would you prefer the one time or a couple of times a week that you do get Chick-fil-A, would you prefer to get back on 22, go right out where the Christmas shop is and get right back onto where you were going, right on, back onto Springfield? Or would you want to deal with 6 days a week traffic, the added traffic because of this new addition? And again, I'm not here to say, no, we don't want a Chick-fil-A. That's not the issue. My issue is the added traffic, the added pollution, the added garbage that's going to be in the area that's going to be affecting me and my family directly. And just like another resident said, walk the dogs, walk my child, everything. We try to be, we love Springfield. We try to enjoy it as much as we can. And even though we knew what we were getting into when we moved into that side of Springfield, right? We knew that we were going to be right by 22, but we also knew that we were going to be living in front of an area that wasn't going to be as chaotic like it will be when a Chick-fil-A moves in, for example. So I just wanted to, again, drive home that point, and hopefully it is listened to, and hopefully that is something that can be remediated whenever the plans are redone, if possible, and brought back to us. And that's all.
Thank you. Any other members of the, yes.
Thank you. Jed Weiner, 5 South Derby Road, Springfield.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess one thing I just would really implore the board is, and maybe I'm just a little bit, once bitten, twice shy, but anybody who has had the displeasure of going up and down Route 22 by the Chick-fil-A in Union should know that that is an absolute disaster. And somehow it got approved, and I assume there was a traffic study that was submitted in support of that. So my assumption is you can get a traffic study to say whatever a traffic study needs to say, but we need to give it a very, very hard look here. And in particular, this location is very close to residential properties. You know, the one in Union, it's a disaster, but at least it's in the center island of 22. You know, the one on Route 10, I think was mentioned, in Morris Plains, again, not by any residential area. So this really will impact residential areas, and we need to be very, very careful, I think, about the impacts that this will have on the community, particularly those on Hillside Avenue. But the spillover is going to impact, South Springfield Avenue, go back up to Mountain Avenue when there's any issues. So it's a larger issue. But I do thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you.
Andrew Schwartz, 164 Wentz Avenue.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
It's unusual, and I should start by saying, look, I sit in that chair on the planning board, so I understand what you guys are facing. It's not an easy decision. It's an important decision. You're going to sit there, as I always do, and feel bad if you have to disappoint the residents living on Hillside, but you have to make a decision based on what our ordinances provide, what the law provides. But here, we have a master plan, and that master plan specifically says you need a variance to get a drive-through. It says we don't want fast food with drive-throughs, and it's there for a reason. And I, for one, feel a little bit ambushed. Because I see this plan, and there is nothing to suggest on this plan that maybe there's going to be another restaurant or a supermarket, which is what Mr. Martinez said could very well be the possibility there. But the other important point here, and you now have 6 weeks to consider this, as you drive around town, think about what you're going to do the next time. When Longhorn is knocked down and Burger King comes and says, hey, we want to drive through too. Or one of the car dealerships on Route 22 in Springfield says, we're done here because we can bring in McDonald's, and McDonald's wants a drive-through. It's not just this. If you approve this, you're setting a precedent. And we have not heard from them, and we will, about the traffic studies, about the traffic flow. As you drive down Hillside for the next 6 weeks, as you drive westbound at 5 o'clock on Route 22, pay attention. See which traffic is coming off Hillside and cutting straight across 3 lanes of traffic in order to make that jug handle at 7-Eleven. And now think about when there's 20 more cars there because Chick-fil-A's in and is at the height of its rush hour. So these are things you get the benefit of now considering in light of Mr. Martinez's testimony and all the documents you've seen. So take advantage of this time and think it through and think about the consequences if you approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to speak at this time? I thank you all for your time this evening. This will continue again, will be carried to January 18th. There is no,
Move to adjourn.
yeah, no further business, so,
Motion to
Thank you
adjourn.
all. Appreciate your
Second.
time.
thank you. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
There she is, she's back.
What if I wanted to stay here, right? All right. What if I wanted to stay here?
In my library for January.